From ancient times to the present, sexuality has always been one of the topics that makes people both desire and fear, both enjoy and feel guilty. How many religions have condemned, how many morals have warned, and how many souls have been entangled, thinking that sexuality is the root of suffering. However, Mahavatar Babaji, the immortal sage of the Himalayas, taught, "Nothing in this universe exists apart from the will of God." If he had not accepted sexuality, it would never have existed in life. That sentence is like a ray of light that breaks the dark clouds of judgment. It makes us see sexuality not as a sin, but as an inevitable part of the soul's evolutionary journey. Sexuality, the origin and secret of life. From the very beginning, when there was nothing but nothingness and light, God opened the universe with eternal love. That love is an endless stream of creative energy, operating like the blood vessels that nourish every planet, every soul, every form of life. In humans, that sacred creative energy is most clearly expressed through sexuality. Sexuality is not simply a biological instinct to maintain the species, but the original spark of creativity, the fire that has forged civilizations, lit the torch of art, and sowed the seeds of human intelligence. Look back at human history. Immortal music that touches millions of hearts. Paintings that transcend time. Great works, scientific inventions that change the fate of the world. They all have the same source, creative energy originating from sexuality, but transformed into a higher level of spirit and intelligence. When sexuality is elevated from the lower instincts, it no longer stops at desire, but becomes a burning passion. Creative inspiration, a desire to explore, and finally unconditional love, a love that transcends the body to reach the soul. Mahavatar Babaji taught, "Sex is the seed that God sowed in man." Through it, he reminded mankind that we are not just temporary bodies, but also creative beings, invited to become companions of the Creator. In other words, sexuality is the divine code, the key to realizing the divine within us, if we know how to illuminate and transform it. Why do people suffer because of sexuality? A great paradox of humanity is that sexuality is a source of divine energy. Yet most people suffer, are addicted, and are torn by it. Why is this so? Babaji explains that suffering does not come from sexuality, but from how people use and deal with sexuality. Sex, when possessed by the ego, becomes greed, control, possession, and addiction. The divine energy is then degraded into the shackles of desire. Sex, when suppressed by fear or by rigid concepts, turns into inhibition, guilt, inferiority, and ultimately, spiritual illness. There are two dangerous extremes that people often fall into. Indulgence, letting the sexual instinct lead, living only for pleasure, and gradually losing the purity of the soul. Extreme denial, seeing sexuality as an enemy, trying to suppress, run away from, causing energy blockages and causing inner suffering. Babaji affirmed, "What God accepts is not blind indulgence, nor is it extreme denial. He accepts sexuality so that people can learn to be aware, to use it as a bridge to go up, rather than as a pit to go down." In essence, sexuality is like a river. If we let it flow, it will drown us in the flood. If we block it with a wall, it will explode, destroying us from within. But if we know how to guide that river in the right direction, it will become a source of water that nourishes the fields, making them bear the fruits of love, wisdom, and creativity. Sexuality and the Journey to Enlightenment, a message from Babaji. Babaji once taught, Sex is the first door of energy. If man knows how to open it to the light, it becomes the path to God. But if man closes it with fear or clouds it with base desires, it becomes darkness that imprisons the soul. There is a profound truth in this teaching. Sexuality is a primordial force, a torrent of energy that God has placed in man so that he can learn to transform and transcend himself. In Kriya Yoga, sexuality is not denied or suppressed. Instead, it is transformed. Through the Kriya breath, sexual energy, which is usually suppressed or wasted in desire, is guided up the spine. On that journey, it purifies each chakra, opening the path of light to divine wisdom and love. When sexual energy is raised, it awakens the heart center, the place of pure love that transcends all attachments. It opens the door of intuition, allowing man to see the truth beyond illusion. It illuminates the brain, bringing the soul into harmony with the universal consciousness. Instead of becoming a chain that binds man in passion, sexuality, through Kriya Yoga, becomes an extraordinary force that brings us closer to union with God. This is the key secret that Babaji wants to impart. God accepts sexuality because he wants man to learn to use it as a bridge to rise. Sex, when it is at its lowest level, is the passion of the flesh, but when it is transformed, it becomes boundless love, infinite light, and the path back to the source. The profound meanings of sexuality in the light of spirituality. Sex, if seen through the human eye, is just instinct. But in the light of spirituality, it opens up the eternal meanings that Babaji revealed. Sexuality is a lesson in union. Whenever a human being longs to connect with another person, it is not just a search for love, but a reflection of a greater desire. Union with the universe. That search is only a small shadow of the desire to dissolve into the ocean of universal consciousness, where all souls belong. Sexuality is a lesson in letting go of the ego. In the moment of true love, a person forgets the small I to melt into the presence of another. It is a primitive expression of egolessness, something that enlightened beings attain in meditation. Babaji pointed out that if humans can expand this moment into infinity, that love will become universal, unconditional, all-encompassing. Sexuality is a lesson in creation. At the higher level, sexuality is no longer limited to physical pleasure. It becomes an endless source of creativity. It inspires art, nourishes intelligence, and gives birth to compassion. This is proof that deep down, sexuality is the creative energy of God, planted in the soul so that humans can continue to create the world with him. Sexuality is a lesson in transformation. When we know how to direct the flow of sexual energy through meditation, through Kriya Yoga, through awareness, that energy becomes a sublime flame, bringing the soul beyond all the shackles of karma. It teaches us that all darkness, if illuminated, can become light. The art of transforming sexuality from instinctive darkness to divine light. Babaji points out that sexual desire is like a fire. If left alone, it can burn, destroy, and turn our lives into ashes of suffering. But if we know how to elevate it, it becomes a light that guides, warms, and illuminates the entire spiritual path. Transformation does not mean suppression. Suppression of sexual desire only causes it to sink into the unconscious, creating repression and creating psychological ghosts. On the contrary, transformation is observing, understanding, and guiding this energy upward so that it does not get stuck in the lower chakras, but merges into the divine flow of love and wisdom. In Kriya Yoga, Babaji has given a subtle tool, conscious breathing. As the breath is guided down the spine, the sexual energy, which lies at the root, is raised step by step through the chakras. Each chakra opening is a step of transformation. In the heart chakra, sexuality becomes human love, tolerance, and connection. In the throat chakra, it turns into art, song, creative knowledge. In the third eye chakra, it becomes intuition, wisdom. And in the crown chakra, it merges with God, becoming the immortal light. Babaji emphasized, sex never disappears, it only changes form. It can be the chains that drag people down, but it can also be the wings that lift them up to the sky of the soul. God's acceptance, a lesson for humanity's liberation. One of Mahavatar Babaji's ultimate revelations is, God accepts sexuality. He accepts it not so that people can indulge in desire, nor so that they can reject it in extremes. He accepts it because sexuality is part of the creative essence, a stream of energy that God has planted in humans as a divine seed. When we realize this truth, humanity is freed from the guilt that has plagued generations. We no longer have to run away from our instincts, nor indulge in abuse. Instead, we enter a middle path, understand, observe, transform. Babaji teaches, when we observe sexuality as a stream of energy, we see that it operates as naturally as breathing, as a flowing river. It is neither good nor bad, it depends on how we use it. When we learn to transform sexuality into love, that energy no longer confines us to the body, but opens up a sacred connection with our own soul and with others. When we understand that sexuality is not opposed to spirituality, we see the truth. Sexuality is the starting energy for us to enter the spiritual path, as long as we know how to open it to the light of awareness. Babaji affirmed, sex is not something to be fought, but something to be contemplated and transformed. When you master sexuality, you become one with the immortal light. This teaching reveals a great door of liberation for humanity. Because throughout history, many people have fallen into two extremes. Either indulge in desire, and then be bound by karma, or suppress instinct, and then live in inhibition, torment, and mental illness. Both paths lead to suffering. Babaji points out the third way, the way of awareness and transformation. Do not deny sexuality, because to deny is to deny a part of the creative light of God within us. Do not indulge sexuality, because to indulge is to let the darkness of instinct take over. But to recognize sexuality, hold it in the light of awareness, and from there raise it to a higher form of energy, the energy of love, creativity, and unity. This is the lesson of liberation for humanity. Sexuality is no longer a burden, but becomes the golden bridge that takes us beyond instinct to touch the divine. When each person knows how to live with sexuality with awareness, humanity will be freed from the chains of fear, guilt, and suffering to enter a new era of freedom, love, and enlightenment. Sex in daily life, the awakening meditation of humanity. If we look deeply, we will see that sexuality is not only expressed in physical pleasure. It is present in all desires. The desire to be loved. The desire to touch beauty. The desire to create, to contribute. The desire to merge with something greater than oneself. Therefore, the transformation of sexuality does not necessarily happen only in meditation, but also in the midst of everyday life. When we love someone without trying to possess them, that is sexuality being elevated. When we put our whole heart into a piece of music, a painting, a creative work, that is sexuality being transformed into art. When we listen to another person with presence, without judgment, that is sexuality being transformed into empathy and unconditional love. Babaji taught, every moment we live consciously with sexuality, that moment is meditation. Sexuality and the path to integration with the universe. If we look deeply, we will realize sexuality is not just an instinct attached to the body, but is the eternal whisper of the soul, an invitation for us to return to the state of unity with the universe. Every desire to merge with another person is actually just a small reflection of the boundless desire that our soul always carries. The desire to merge with the Great Self, the desire to dissolve into the ocean of love and light. In love between a man and a woman, when two people merge into each other, in an instant, the ego is erased. That is the first door for humans to taste the complete unity, the state that the sages have lived completely in meditation. In artistic creation, when a piece of music is played, a painting is painted, or a poem flows from the soul. That is the moment when man is no longer a maker, but only a stream of the universe manifesting itself. In meditation, sexual energy is elevated through the chakras, beyond the bonds of the body, and becomes a bridge that brings us to God. This is a union that is no longer physical, but an absolute dissolution in the light, where the individual and the universe are no longer separate. And this is the secret of acceptance from God. He does not see sexuality as sin, but as a secret door. This door, if opened with ignorance, leads to chains and suffering, but if opened with awareness, it becomes a shortcut for man to return to his own divine source. Babaji's message to humanity in the new era. Mahavatar Babaji, in his infinite wisdom, not only gave people knowledge to understand sexuality, but also left a vital message, a compass for humanity to enter the era of transformation. If humans continue to fear sexuality, they will imprison themselves in the darkness of guilt and sin. They will live a fragmented life, always running away from their own instincts and losing the door to God. If humans continue to abuse sexuality, they will sink into addiction, suffering, and chaos. Society will be filled with lost souls, exchanging spiritual light for temporary pleasure, turning creative energy into destruction. But if humans know how to transform sexuality through awareness, knowing how to breathe, knowing how to observe, knowing how to bring sexual energy up instead of letting it pull them down, then sexuality will become the foundation of unconditional love, of compassion, of art, of creativity, and of union with the universe. And when that happens, a new era will open for humanity. An era where man is no longer a slave to his instincts, but master of his own life energy. An era where sexuality is no longer hidden or abused, but recognized as the sacred flame of creation. An era where every human being becomes a little creator, accompanying God in building a world of light, love, and wisdom. Babaji said, "Look at sexuality with the eyes of light. When you know how to transform it, sexuality will no longer be a darkness for you to fight, but will become the wings that lift your soul back to God." 12 profound philosophical messages on transforming sexuality on the spiritual path according to Babaji. 1. Sexuality is the creative energy of God. It is not sin, but the primordial force. When understood and transformed by man, it becomes the door to union with the divine. 2. Don't consume, transform. The ordinary person consumes sexual energy and pleasure. The yogi transforms it into the light of wisdom and compassion. 3. Sexuality is not to be denied, but to be sublimated. Denying sexuality only leads to suppression and suffering. Sublimating sexuality leads to purity and freedom. 4. Sexual energy is the fire of Kundalini. When it is bound, it burns men in desire. When it is elevated, it blazes forth as Kundalini Shakti, bringing us into the state of Samadhi. 5. Sex may be an illusion, love is the way. Sexual pleasure is fleeting, but pure love beyond sensuality opens the door to immortality. 6. Transform sex into bhakti, divine love. The practitioner learns to transform sexual energy into devotion, merging with God. 7. When sex is controlled, the mind becomes calm. Sex waves are strong winds. If controlled, the sea of the mind becomes calm to reflect the divine. 8. The secret of Brahmacharya, preservation of vital energy. One who knows how to preserve sexual energy without wasting it radiates mystical power, clear wisdom, and inner light. 9. Sex is driven by the ego, love is driven by God. The practitioner learns to see every physical desire as an invitation to return to oneself, not to run after external things. 10. Transforming lust into compassion. When the sexual energy is refined, it opens the heart of compassion, making the practitioner love humanity instead of clinging to an individual. 11. The one who subdues the sexual energy is the one who is truly free. It is not the one who rules the country who is strong, but the one who masters the sexual energy is the true king of himself. 12. The sexual energy is transformed into immortal light. When the sexual energy is brought into meditation, it sublimates into immortal light, merging with emptiness. That is the ultimate goal of Babaji's path. Babaji taught, when the sexual energy is freed from the shackles of the body, it becomes the wings that carry the soul to God. Namaste.